Hey everyone, welcome back to the Bright Hill channel. So I apologize in advance. I know the microphone in this phone is just not as good as the previous one, so the audio in these videos is unideal. It really does tend to pick up a lot of background noise, and I apologize for that. But it's time that I give another update on my go-kart project. I realize it's been a while. I have been busy, and also for whatever reason, the last couple weekends I've just not been feeling very good, so I haven't really done as much as I should have been, and I apologize in advance. I know the summer is kind of midway through and I'm running out of time, so let's just talk about some of the stuff I've done. So I think the last time, I'm not sure if you've seen this, but I fixed this seat so that it's more comfortable. I broke the steering and I'm going to do it in a different way, which I'll show you. And a recent development is I just bought a snowblower on sale. Well, on sale as in it was on Kijiji, which is sort of like Craigslist for Canada. Although we do have Craigslist, it's just not very well used. This thing was only 40 bucks Canadian, and it happens to come with a supposedly working 206cc, I believe it's 206cc. 800 is just the torque that it makes, but it's a 205 cc unknown horsepower Briggs and Stratton engine, which is hopefully working. So yeah, there's a reason that it was only 40 bucks, so let me show you. Everything works except, yeah, there's something going on in the gear case underneath, which is totally fine because that's the part I was going to have to disassemble anyways. The previous owner told me that some of the screws are missing, and that's why it's making that noise, so we're going to have to locate some in my screw stash, or bolts I should say, and then attempt to make that working. But what I'm going to do first is I'm just going to check this thing over. I brought it in last week and I haven't had a chance to look it over yet, but I'm excited because basically we have that, and then it's going to be combined with this and also that Honda engine over there to turn it into something cool. There's also been some other development. I have all my waste oil over here and I'm trying to get rid of it. I just haven't made the time to go to the dump to get rid of it, but there's also a little bit more space down here because I sold a set of wheels, and yeah, I don't know. That's really it. Not much has been happening. This box here is for my tonneau cover for my truck, so that was a good thing. And the truck was the only reason I was able to get this machinery home, so yeah, glad that I bought it. So in order to get this engine running, which is sort of my first step, I just want to see if the snowblower works as it should. If the engine runs, that would be good, and then once I know that it runs, I can take it off without any worries. And also once this, I know that it works, then that will be good. It's probably loud as heck. It does have electric start. I honestly think I got a pretty good bargain just for the engine alone on 40 bucks. Seriously though, it's weird. If you're looking for an engine for something, just buy an old snowblower or an old like lawn tractor or something. People barely ask any money for these because they're hard to move. So as long as you have something that you can move it with, i.e. a truck or a trailer, then you probably won't have any problem getting an engine like this for 40 bucks and then a bunch of scrap metal to go with it if you don't need the rest. Like, can't complain. What I was thinking as well is obviously this engine makes more power than my 160 Honda over there. Now, I do want to use the Honda. That is the game plan still. It is pull start, which is better for this sort of application. But hey, if it doesn't work, we got one right here. First thing to check with these engines is always fuel, and it has some in it. I also have some that I can add, but I don't want to fill it up too much. I got to stabilize that fuel and get this thing ready to be sitting for a while. Oil is next. I haven't checked that. But next time you see this, let's see if we can get it ripping. Well, based on that little clip, there was some music in the background, but I kind of doubt you could hear it. It doesn't drive forwards. I tried this on, and then I had it in speed 5 and it didn't do anything. No wheel spin there. This lever here, which controls the spinning blades at the front, seems to be fine, and the engine itself runs fine, except when you push down the little thing here, it pisses fuel out the bottom, which is weird. There's a little puddle there you can see, but I'm not too concerned, it runs fine. let's take it apart and see what's going on down under. I might be able to do something with that. I also want to try and separate the front half from the back half and basically just make this into a much lighter package. So I'm gonna get some sockets, I'm gonna pull this back in the garage and tear it apart. So these videos serve to help me as well, because in the future I'm gonna go back and be like, what the heck did it look like? And now I have video proof. So I've taken off a few things, mainly just the chute at the top of this, mostly so I could have better access to the pulley system and the cover that came with it. Both of those are off now, and the inner workings of the, well, drive assembly, I guess you could call it, have been exposed. And this is kind of cool stuff, at least for me. I don't know, maybe I'm the only one who finds this interesting. However, basically what it is like a series of pulleys. This is a two-stage pulley, so it's got a small one at the closest side of the engine there, and then a larger one here. And now when we pull down the levers, this is the lever for the screw. You can see that the larger pulley gets engaged by that. So I think what I'm going to be able to do for my purposes is use this large pulley down here, you can see that, and the large one up top. Or I could potentially mix and match and use the small one and the slightly medium-sized one down there, because that is what's used for the drive assembly, because it kind of clicks into place when you pull the drive lever, although that is the broken part on this mower, or on this blower, not mower. But yeah, so very interesting. I don't know how I'm going to get access to that. There are a ton of bolts on either side, likely bolting in pieces for this whole assembly. But I want to see it working, basically, and I want to figure out what's wrong with it. I know there's a cover on the bottom of this, so I might have to put it up on ramps, maybe? Like, actually get out my car ramps. I mean, these things back here. And then that'll maybe be a possibility. I'm not sure. But it's cool to see that it's pulley-based, and yeah. I was hoping it was chain-based, but pulley will work too. It just might mean we have a little bit of slippage, maybe a little bit more than a little bit. But this engine is a less powerful one that I'm going with, so yeah, I don't know. The interesting thing about this is I could theoretically just take the back half of the mower, or blower again, just cut it off right there, just take off all those parts, and then I would have an actual like gearbox based go-kart. That being said, even speed 6 on these things, which is the fastest, is really darn slow, so it's probably not going to work. Essentially, my plan is I want to try and take the drive mechanism out of this, redo it so that it actually has faster speeds. Potentially we can keep the gear shift, which would be incredibly cool, and then I'll put that at the back here. So yeah, how do we get room for a gear shifter on this? So here's a little deep dive into the mechanics of how this thing works. I got the light on so you can see, but there is the part that's broken. Essentially, this rubber wheel needs to bolt into there. So that's what the owner, or previous owner of this thing, was telling me when he was saying that it needs bolts to be bolted up, and that's the part that wiggles around when it moves. So you see that thing right there, that's the gear shift. If I shift gears, which is hard to do with one hand, then it moves across the wheel in a different way. So essentially what's happening is the engine is spinning this wheel, and the gear shift moves this rubber foot essentially along the wheel to put it in different like drive modes, essentially, with reverse being far to the, I guess, wait, that would be left side of the disc, and the hardest drive being on the right side. So it basically just changes the ratios as you understand discs in the way that they move. It's the tightest at the center, so therefore the slowest moving, and it's all the way in 6th gear over here, which would be the fastest, and that is how that works. So fairly simple, very intuitive. I figured that out fairly quickly. But the interesting thing is that when you pull on this, you can see, so I'm pulling on this lever here, it moves that forwards. I guess it's hard to see. So that's how it engages the actual drive. It lifts the wheel itself, and therefore the pulley that the engine is attached to stick to the rubber wheel and then make it work, which is very cool. So that's how that goes. Well, it took me a second to figure it out, just wiggling around under here, but that's how that works. When it comes to the other one, I'm not 100% yet. mostly because I can't pull on the string for it down here, but it's basically just like a shaft that locks in and out as far as I'm aware, and then that secondary pulley on the back is for that. So pretty cool. I could definitely fix this thing like quite easily actually, and then just turn around and sell it, but that isn't the point. I've got some really high shear bolts, and we can grab some Loctite and we can lock that bad boy back into its position on that metal piece, and then boom, it'll be working again. However, I think it's time for a bit of a further disassembly. So you can see up top, oh man, it's not going to want to focus all the way up there, but there are some bolts. Those two black ones there, it's not focusing on them, but they're in the background. Those are the engine bolts. Same thing up top there. Those are engine bolts. And there's a few on the front as well. So it's going to be really difficult to whip that thing out, is essentially what I'm trying to say. However, I'm going to give it a shot, just with some meaty extensions, see if we can get all the way up in there. Some safety glasses too. Can't ever be too safe. I don't want to get crushed by this mower or this blower. I'm just going to start calling it a mower at this point, whatever. Hopefully you're finding this interesting. I know I am. This is really cool. And as I look at this stuff, I'm just trying to figure out a way to adapt it to this. If you see a good way, let me know, because I'm probably not going to get to it today. Yeah, remember when I was saying I didn't know how the front section worked? Well, essentially what happens is the engine is spinning both of these sets at the same time. The small one is for our drive, which we were just looking at, and the big one is for our big spinny boy at the front, which by itself is a whole other axle, by the way, which is cool. And it's got a differential. So one of the things I'm not so sure about is whether I'm going to use the internals from the back axle or the front, because as you can see, my go-kart's width is here, and then this thing's width is here. It's significantly less. So in order to make this work, I'm going to have to lengthen the axle somehow, which is probably going to be the biggest challenge, but I might be able to just use this and then some creativity. Mixing these two things together is more than likely what's actually going to happen. But let me show you what I'm thinking. So this is a cool setup because I already showed you that it moves. Essentially what's happening is the pulley is moving, but it's not moving that pulley down there until you engage this, because this thing moves the tensioner, which essentially just makes it firm around the big pulley at the bottom. So it's moving, but it's slipping. Very, very strange, but it's cool how this all works together. Very simple stuff, but cool nonetheless. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the entire front. We'll see how well that goes. Couple bolts out, and boom, she's separated. We have the front mechanism, and therefore the whole thing that goes on inside of here, including the spinny bits. It's like looking at a flywheel. And then boom, we have the engine separated from the front end, and kind of a self-contained engine unit, I guess. It's a little strange, but it's just missing one thing. Basically, yeah, this is really cool. I'm very, very excited because this gives a lot of possibilities. I can nail, or I can grab that pulley off of there, use these drive shafts for things, and slam it in the back if I want to. Or we could go for a slip setup so that the belt slips. Like, we don't have a clutch, right? So if the belt slips while it's in drive, essentially, I could turn on the engine and then leave it going, and the go-kart won't go forwards until I notch in, say, a lever like this, except it won't be a pull, it'll be like a click similar to that, and then boom, we're in drive, and then we'll have forward, well, it'll be a CVT, I guess. No gears, it'll just be engine directly hooked up to a pulley, so it'll be based entirely on engine speed. But yeah, that's kind of ridiculously cool. So the next step, I guess, is to take the engine off of this whole setup and then sort of investigate what's going on underneath. Taking the engine off I thought would be easier with this whole part off, but it kind of isn't, because now it has to lean on something. Previously it was leaning on this, and it can't do that anymore. So here we are. Well, I got to figure out the rest. Let's just take another look at the internal assembly from a different angle. So this piece here just basically means that this pulley isn't going to fly off, and then we have our engaging pulley, which is hooked up to that handle up there. The whole thing is just very interesting to me, though. Also, check out that mini starter. Cool stuff. All right, let's get a move on. One thing that I find interesting about this specific Briggs, it's definitely bigger than the Honda by a significant amount, but there's no throttle on it. It's just, I guess it's set to max all the time. So that might be an issue, requiring the cover to come off there. If I was to use this engine, because I need to have a throttle. We can't just be going full out all the time. The steering is already sketchy as is. By the way, setup ideas, those Snowblower wheels, or power washer wheels, they're leaving. I'm going to use these mobility scooter wheels that I have, and these are going to be the back wheels, because yes please, that's a lot of traction in the dirt. And pretty terrible noise on the road, but I'm looking forward to it. Okay, I was just checking this thing out. I put it up on a stand so I can roll it around, but it's heavy as heck. Look at those there, and then look at that inside piece there. The inside piece is the one that shovels snow up through this thing and then shoots it out, which is the whole point of a snowblower, is to pick up snow and displace it so you don't have to pick it up by hand. If I turn the flywheel, which is what I'm calling it, but it's basically just a pulley, it's moving fairly quickly. That thing on the inside matches its speed exactly, so that's a good thing. But unfortunately, the gear ratio is ridiculous. With that spinning in the inside quite significantly, the outside barely moves at all. It might be better shown if I just manipulate the outside. But yeah, the gear ratio of this, I think it's probably a worm gear in there, is pretty ridiculous. So that might not work out the way I wanted it to for a rear axle. However, we can probably use the axle shafts for the extension of this rear axle, because that's kind of necessary, I think, at the moment. Just to give you an idea, full width of this is approximately 23 inches. It's just under 2 feet wide, and I think my frame is 19 inches by itself. If we go out to my wheels here, we're looking at 3 feet, so it's a whole foot shorter, and it'll basically mean that I have to cut this, which is fine. So I don't know, really narrow track width at the rear. Is that going to be a thing? So here's the big Briggs sitting on the tabletop. Basically, the easiest way to get it off was just to take the entire top plate off, and I probably should have done that a while ago. However, this is some fairly cool stuff here. So this is the pulley that goes on the front of the Briggs, well, on the drive, I should say. Here's my old Honda. This is what it looks like going on there. You just got to find the keyway, essentially. There we go. So it fits just fine, which is great, and it basically just means that they're both 3/4 shaft, which is kind of what I figured. But the cool part is, if we don't want to use the small one, we can always turn it around and go for a larger pulley, which should mean that it spins faster. At least I think so. I gotta redo some of my pulley theory stuff. But this is very exciting. You can ignore those bolts there because they won't be there. The actual engine plate for this is very flat, so we should be able to reuse some of the screws. Obviously that I don't want to mess up, so we'll figure it out. So I got a tensioner in there and just a bunch of bolts, and I need to take the bolts out of this so we can get the base plate back on here, because I think that's going to be important. But there's the drive system for the entire snowblower. Here's that rickety wheel that I was talking about before. Essentially, we just need to stick it in here just like that, and the whole thing would probably be working fine once again. However, we got our 2 chains, and yeah, I gotta kind of dig into this and see how it works. I'm gonna put a bolt into there and basically make it so this will stop rattling. We can kind of ignore that system. The big wheel is probably not going to be necessary, or the big pulley, but it's kind of a cool thing to be able to see this all stripped down. And it's cool to now theorize, what the heck am I going to do? The base plan here is essentially, I need to keep similar geometry to what's in here. Originally, I was thinking of redoing this entire box myself, what I'm probably going to end up doing is cutting a bunch of it off and then welding it into my chassis in sort of my own way. Um, that has yet to be seen. I don't need it to be covered. It doesn't need to be protected from snow or anything like that. So these chains can be all out in the open, except I will put a chain guard so if one flies off, I won't get attacked while I'm sitting in the back there. I also have a sheet of aluminum. I think it's right there, that I'm planning on putting in between here and the front, and then I'll use some of it as protection as well for the back. So theoretically, I won't die while riding this. At least that's the goal. So talking about what we need to keep, that is kind of the important part. And it's basically what's going on here. We have a gear reduction. Going from a small gear here, which is actually attached to the axle, to a shaft. That shaft runs to another gear, which I guess gives it some, oh, it's a larger gear there, which gives it likely a gear reduction. And then that shaft runs to here, which runs to the thing, which runs to the pulley, and then the pulley is turned by this thing here, which is currently totally free and moving because the rubber bit is not touching it. So that's the entire drive system of a snowblower in one box. And now I gotta make it work with something else. You know what? I don't think that those are bearings. This is probably gonna fail incredibly quickly if I ever do actually get up to any speed. But I mean, this is just a first try. Like, if I get this working, I can buy actual bearings to swap in the place of this stuff. So yeah, I got the engine piece up on the stand here. I'm just working on how to figure this out. So I think I'm going to leave this video here though. Let me know what you think of this in the comments, guys. I got a big old wheel at the back. This is going to be pretty darn fun. Extending this shaft is actually extremely important, but the wheels are literally just held on by like a hole through it. I don't think I have any way to drill through hardened steel like this, so I'm not sure how I'm gonna do that, but I'll figure it out. I might have to just buy a several foot long 3/4 is I believe what that size is, piece of metal, and then work with it as is. Basically everything is held on just with a bolt through the piece, and then I guess a high shear bolt. So yeah, it's easy enough to make. Basically just need that to get everything sorted. I've got two options for different shafts, although I think the secondary shaft might be a smaller size. Basically, I'm taking the wheels off and I'm going to figure it all out. Something that is cool is that I believe any of my wheels will fit onto this size. Something like that, for instance. Although that's way out in the middle of nowhere and you definitely want it a lot further in. something like that. Basically, we've created the worst snowblower out of a mobility scooter that anybody could even possibly manage. So I'll see you guys again soon. Let me know what you think. If you have any ideas for the gear combos, then let me know. But yeah, that's the idea. See you again soon.